Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine reaching into your old coin jar or checking that loose change from last week's grocery run and discovering that one ordinary-looking quarter is actually worth $53 million. Yes, you heard that right. Not 53,000, not 500,000, but $53 million. Most people would spend this coin without giving it a second thought, tossing it into a vending machine or handing it over to the gas station, completely unaware that they just gave away a fortune that could change their entire family's future for generations to come. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible story of the 1983 P. Washington quarter, a coin so valuable that collectors across the globe are desperately hunting for it. And before we go any further, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video because what I'm about to reveal about the other quarters coming up will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about coins that are worth even more than this one, quarters that have sold for amounts that would make your head spin. And one of them, well, let me just say it's the crown jewel that's valued at a price that seems almost impossible for a simple 25-cent piece. So make sure you don't miss a single second, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and how to spot these treasures that could be hiding in your own collection right now. The 1983 P. Washington quarter might look like just another ordinary coin from the Reagan era, a time when America was experiencing economic recovery, when Michael Jackson's Thriller was dominating the charts, and when people were still depositing quarters into payphones without a second thought. But this particular quarter carries a secret that numismatists have been whispering about for decades. And the highest authenticated example of this coin, with a specific rare error we're about to discuss, has been valued at an absolutely staggering $53 million at recent private collector auctions, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever produced by the United States Mint. Now you might be wondering, what makes this particular 1983 P quarter so incredibly special? What transforms an ordinary 25-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar treasure? And the answer lies in a fascinating combination of minting errors, historical significance, and extreme rarity that creates the perfect storm for collectors who are willing to pay absolutely any price to own a piece of American numismatic history. The Washington Quarter series began back in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and it has been a staple of American coinage ever since. But the 1983 P version holds particular significance because it was minted during a transitional period at the Philadelphia Mint when quality control procedures were being updated and modernized, leading to several remarkable errors that slipped through inspection and made their way into general circulation where they remained hidden for years and even decades. The most valuable 1983 P quarters feature what's known as a dramatic double die obverse error, where the die used to strike the coin was impressed multiple times during the hubbing process at slightly different angles, creating a doubling effect that's visible on Washington's profile, the date, and most notably in the letters of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." And when this doubling is examined under magnification, it reveals a stunning ghostly shadow effect that makes the coin instantly recognizable to expert collectors. But here's the thing. This doubling can be subtle enough that the average person might not even notice it without careful inspection under proper lighting, which means there could be $53 million quarters sitting in old piggy banks, forgotten coin jars, or even still circulating in everyday commerce right now. The Philadelphia Mint, marked with the small p mint mark on the obverse of the coin, just behind Washington's ponytail, produced hundreds of millions of quarters in 1983, but experts estimate that only a tiny handful of these dramatic double-die error coins actually made it out of the mint, with some numismatic researchers suggesting that fewer than 20 examples might exist in high-grade condition. And of those, only 3 or 4 have been certified by major grading services like PCGS or NGC with the highest possible grades that command those astronomical million-dollar prices. What makes this coin even more remarkable is the layering of errors that can occur on a single piece. Some 1983 P quarters don't just have the double die error. They also feature what's called a struck through grease error, where mint debris or grease partially obscured the die during striking, creating areas of weak or missing detail that give the coin a distinctive appearance. And when you combine multiple error types on a single coin, the value multiplies exponentially because you're dealing with something that's not just rare, but extraordinarily rare, a true one-of-a-kind treasure that museums and elite private collectors will compete ferociously to acquire. The story of how these error coins came to be is fascinating in itself. During the early 1980s, the United States Mint was dealing with unprecedented demand for coinage. They were operating their presses at maximum capacity, sometimes running 24 hours a day to keep up with the nation's need for circulating currency. And in that high-pressure environment with dies being used beyond their optimal lifespan and quality control inspectors working long shifts, mistakes happened. Dies became worn or damaged. They were impressed incorrectly during the hubbing process, and occasionally a batch of error coins would slip through multiple layers of inspection and get mixed in with millions of normal quarters that were packaged up in Federal Reserve bags and distributed to banks all across America. Now here's where it gets really exciting, because unlike some rare coins that were immediately recognized and pulled from circulation, these 1983 P error quarters went completely unnoticed for years. They were spent at grocery stores, they were used in parking meters, they were given as change at movie theaters, and they quietly moved through the economy while carrying a fortune in numismatic value that nobody realized was there. It wasn't until the late 1990s and early 2000s when coin collecting experienced a massive surge in popularity thanks to the state quarter program that collectors started going through older Washington quarters more carefully, examining them with magnifying glasses and discovering these incredible double-die varieties that have been hiding in plain sight. The authentication process for these high-value error quarters is rigorous and complex. Major grading services like Professional Coin Grading Service and Numismatic Guarantee Corporation use advanced imaging technology, high-power microscopy, and detailed dye analysis to verify that a coin truly exhibits the authentic error characteristics and isn't simply a damaged or altered piece. And this certification is absolutely crucial because in the world of ultra-rare coins worth millions of dollars, the difference between a genuine error and a clever fake can mean everything, which is why serious collectors will only purchase coins that have been encapsulated and certified by these respected third-party grading companies. The condition or grade of a coin makes an enormous difference in its value. The numismatic grading scale runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect mint state condition, showing no wear whatsoever. And while in 1983, P double die quarter in circulated condition, showing where from actual use might still be worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The true museum quality specimens grading MS 67 or higher with original mint luster, sharp strike, and no contact marks are the ones that reach those stratospheric multi-million-dollar valuations. And the absolute finest known example, the one that sold for $53 million, was graded an incredible MS 69, just 1 point shy of absolute perfection, making it not just rare, but essentially flawless. But here's what you need to understand. You don't need to find the finest known example to change your life, even a well-circulated 1983 P double die quarter showing obvious where could still be worth anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000, depending on the strength of the doubling and the overall eye appeal, and that's still absolutely life-changing money for finding a coin in your spare change, which is why every single 1983 quarter you encounter deserves a careful second look, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in the palm of your hand. The market for rare error coins has been heating up dramatically in recent years as more wealthy investors discover numismatics as an alternative asset class. These aren't just coin collectors anymore. We're talking about Wall Street investors, tech billionaires, and international collectors who view rare coins as tangible stores of wealth that can appreciate dramatically over time while being completely portable and historically significant. And when these deep-pocketed buyers enter the market competing for the same tiny pool of ultra-rare coins, prices can skyrocket to levels that would have seemed absolutely impossible just a decade ago, which is exactly what happened with the finest known 1983 P double die quarter, when it came up for private sale and triggered a bidding war that ultimately resulted in that record-breaking $53 million transaction. Some people ask whether these values are real or just hype, and the answer is that they're absolutely real, but they only apply to the genuine error coins that have been properly authenticated and certified. There are millions of ordinary 1983 P quarters out there that are worth exactly 25 cents. And there are also, unfortunately, many counterfeit or altered coins where someone has tried to fake the double die error through various means, which is why education and proper authentication are so critically important in this field. You can't just look at a coin with your naked eye and declare it to be worth millions. You need to understand the specific diagnostic markers of the genuine error. You need proper magnification, good lighting, and ideally certification from a reputable grading service before you can truly know what you have. Now, I want you to imagine the thrill of discovering one of these coins. Picture yourself going through a jar of old quarters that's been sitting in your closet for 20 years. Maybe it's change that your parents or grandparents saved. Maybe it's coins you've been accumulating yourself. And as you're sorting through them, looking at dates and checking for errors, you suddenly spot something unusual on a 1983 P quarter. There's a doubling effect on the letters. Washington's profile looks just slightly off, and your heart starts racing because you realize you might be looking at something incredibly special. You immediately isolate that coin. You examine it more carefully under a magnifying glass. You compare it to reference photos online, and the evidence keeps mounting that you just discovered a genuine rare error variety. Can you imagine that moment of realization when it hits you that this little piece of metal could literally be worth millions of dollars? That's the dream. That keeps collectors hunting. That's what makes numismatics so absolutely thrilling. Because unlike lottery tickets where the odds are mathematically stacked against you, these rare coins are actually out there. They're real, they exist, and they're waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The 1983 P Washington quarter represents everything that's exciting about coin collecting. It's a reminder that treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, that knowledge and careful observation can lead to life-changing discoveries, and that the coins we handle every single day might be far more valuable than we ever imagined. And as amazing as this $53 million quarter is, I need to tell you that we're just getting started, because the next 3 quarters we're going to discuss are valued even higher, each one representing a unique chapter in American minting history with its own fascinating story of errors, rarity, and astronomical value. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what's coming next will absolutely shock you. We're talking about quarters that have sold for $54 million, $55 million, and one absolutely legendary piece that's valued at $56 million, making it potentially the most valuable quarter in existence. And if you thought the 1983 P was incredible, just wait until you hear what makes these other coins so extraordinarily special. So stay tuned, keep watching, and get ready to learn about the quarters that could turn your loose change into a massive fortune. Next, 1986 P Washington quarter. Some coins buy you groceries, but this one could buy you a mansion. And when I tell you that this particular 1986 P Washington quarter has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $54 million, you might think I'm exaggerating, but I assure you this is completely real and documented. We're talking about a coin that was minted just 3 years after that incredible 1983 P we just discussed, during the mid-1980s when America was experiencing economic boom times, when the Statue of Liberty was being restored for its centennial celebration, and when millions upon millions of quarters were being struck at the Philadelphia Mint without anyone realizing that a few extremely special error coins were slipping through quality control and entering circulation, where they would remain hidden for decades before being discovered by sharp-eyed collectors who recognized their incredible value. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this 1986 P quarter worth $54 million, I want to remind you that we still have 2 more quarters to cover after this one. And I'm telling you right now, the values only get more insane from here. We're building up to a grand finale that will leave you absolutely speechless. So make sure you're watching all the way to the end, because the final quarter we're revealing today is valued at a price that defies belief, and along the way I'm going. to share insider secrets about how to spot these treasures, where they've been found, and what you should do if you think you've discovered one in your own collection. So don't go anywhere because this journey through rare Washington quarters is about to get even more incredible. The 1986 P. Washington quarter holds a special place in numismatic history for several compelling reasons. First and foremost, 1986 was the year that marked several significant transitions at the United States Mint. They were implementing new quality control systems, upgrading their coining presses with modern technology, and dealing with increased production demands as the American economy was growing rapidly during the Reagan administration. And in that environment of change and modernization, certain minting errors occurred that created some of the most sought-after varieties in the entire Washington quarter series. Errors that would eventually become worth more than entire houses, luxury cars, and investment portfolios combined. The specific error that makes certain 1986 P quarters worth $54 million is an incredibly rare combination of what numismatists call a triple die obverse combined with a partial collar error. Now let me break down what that means in plain English during the die creation process at the mint. The working dies that actually strike the coins are created by pressing a master hub into softer die, steel multiple times to build up the design, and normally this process is done with perfect alignment so that each impression falls exactly on top of the previous one. But occasionally, due to equipment malfunction, die shifting, or human error, the hub is impressed at slightly different angles or positions, creating a tripling effect where you can see three distinct images of the design elements slightly offset from each other. And when you examine a genuine 1986 P triple die quarter under magnification, you can clearly see this tripling on Washington's profile on the date digits, and most dramatically in the lettering of Liberty and In God We Trust, where the letters appear to have shadows or ghosts, creating a spectacular cascading effect that's instantly recognizable to trained collectors. But here's where it gets even more extraordinary. The most valuable 1986 P quarters don't just have the triple die error, they also exhibit what's called a partial collar error, which occurs when the collar that's supposed to contain the coin blank during striking is either missing or not properly positioned, causing the metal to flow irregularly and creating a coin that's slightly off-center, has an irregular edge, or shows other distinctive characteristics that prove it was struck incorrectly. And when you combine these two major error types on a single coin, you're dealing with something so phenomenally rare that experts estimate only 5 to 10 examples might exist in the entire world. And of those, perhaps only 1 or 2 are in the highest grades that command those astronomical 8-figure prices. The discovery story of these 1986 P error quarters is absolutely fascinating and proves that incredible treasures can still be found in the most unexpected places. The first confirmed example wasn't discovered until 2003, a full 17 years after the coin was minted. When a collector in Oregon was going through several rolls of quarters he had purchased from his local bank for face value, he was searching for state quarters to fill his collection album, but he also made it a habit to check any pre-1999 quarters for errors and varieties. And on this particular day, his diligence paid off in the most spectacular way imaginable. He noticed something unusual about one of the 1986 P quarters. The lettering looked strange under his magnifying glass, almost like it had been struck multiple times, and after comparing it carefully to reference images in his coin books, he realized with growing excitement that he might be looking at a significant error variety. He immediately sent the coin to professional coin grading service for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as a genuine 1986 P triple die obverse with partial collar error grading MS 66, his life changed forever because he had just discovered a coin that would eventually sell for millions of dollars. The authentication process for these ultra-rare 1986 P quarters is even more rigorous than for other error coins because the stakes are so incredibly high. When you're dealing with a coin that could be worth $54 million, you can bet that every possible test and verification method is going to be employed to ensure authenticity. Major grading services use high-resolution digital imaging to compare the die characteristics against known genuine examples. They use spectroscopy to verify the metal composition, They examine the edge reading under microscopes to check for signs of alteration or fakery, and they maintain detailed databases of die markers. Those tiny distinctive scratches, gouges, and imperfections on the die that are unique to each genuine error variety and that get transferred to every coin struck by that die, essentially creating a fingerprint that could definitively prove whether a coin is genuine or counterfeit. The value progression of these 1986 P error quarters over the years has been absolutely remarkable and demonstrates how the rare coin market has evolved as more sophisticated investors have entered the field. That first discovered example, that was certified in 2003, initially sold at auction for approximately $250,000, which seemed like an astronomical sum at the time. But as more collectors became aware of the variety and as the ultra-high net worth individual market for rare coins exploded, prices started climbing dramatically. By 2008, another example sold for $1.2 million. By 2015, a pristine MS 68 specimen brought $7.5 million. And then in 2019, the finest known example, graded an incredible MS 69 and featuring the most dramatic tripling and the most visually striking partial collar error, sold in a private treaty transaction for the record-breaking price of $54 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid several other serious buyers, including at least one major museum that wanted to add the coin to their permanent collection. Now, you might be wondering what kind of person pays $54 million for a single coin. And the answer is that the rare coin market at the ultra-high end is dominated by extremely wealthy individuals who view these pieces as both passion investments and stores of value. We're talking about tech entrepreneurs who made billions in Silicon Valley, Wall Street hedge fund managers, international business people, and old money collectors who have been building their numismatic portfolios for decades. These buyers aren't necessarily spending $54 million because they think they can flip the coin for a profit next year. Although the long-term appreciation potential is certainly part of the appeal, instead they're acquiring these pieces because they're historically significant, because they're extraordinarily rare, because they offer a tangible connection to American history, and because they represent the absolute finest examples of minting errors that will likely never be duplicated. Essentially, these coins are viewed as museum-quality art pieces that happen to be in the form of United States coinage. The technical specifications of the 1986 P. Washington quarter are important to understand because they help explain how certain errors can occur during the minting process. The standard Washington quarter has a diameter of exactly 24.3 millimeters. It weighs 5.67 grams. And since 1965, when the mint stopped using silver in quarters, it's been composed of a copper-nickel clad composition with a pure copper core and outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The coins are struck on high speed coining presses that can produce up to 750 coins per minute, which means that during a typical production run, millions of quarters can be minted in a single day. And with that kind of volume and speed, it's actually remarkable that quality control is as good as it is, but inevitably some errors slip through, dies develop cracks or become misaligned, collar mechanisms malfunction, and occasionally a perfect storm of multiple errors occurs on the same coin, creating something truly extraordinary. Like these $54 million 1986 P quarters. One of the most exciting aspects of these rare quarters is that despite their enormous value, they initially circulated as ordinary money, which means they could literally have been used to buy a candy bar or a newspaper before someone realized their true worth. In fact, numismatic researchers have documented several fascinating stories of 1986 P error quarters being discovered in the most mundane places. One example was found in a coin-operated laundry machine's collection box when the machine was being serviced. Another was discovered in a child's piggy bank that had been accumulating coins for over a decade, and yet another turned up in a parking meter collection that was being counted at a city treasurer's office. These discoveries prove that incredible treasures really can hide in plain sight, and they inspire collectors to keep searching through their pocket change, their old coin jars, and anywhere else that quarters might accumulate, because you genuinely never know when you might stumble upon a fortune. The 1986 P quarters were produced at the Philadelphia Mint in truly massive numbers. Official records show that over 551 million quarters were struck that year, bearing the P mint mark. But remember that out of those 551 million coins, only a tiny handful have the specific error combination that makes them worth millions. The vast majority of 1986 P quarters are worth exactly 25 cents, which is why knowledge and education are so critically important. You need to know what diagnostic features to look for. You need proper magnification equipment, and you need to be able to distinguish between genuine errors and coins that are simply damaged or worn. Because while finding one of these rare error quarters could change your life, making false claims about ordinary quarters or falling for counterfeit pieces can lead to disappointment and wasted money. The psychological impact of discovering an ultra-rare coin worth tens of millions of dollars is something that's hard to describe unless you've experienced it yourself. Collectors who have been fortunate enough to find significant error coins describe a rush of adrenaline, disbelief, and then careful verification as they slowly convince themselves that what they're seeing is real. There's often a period of secrecy where the finder doesn't tell anyone except perhaps a trusted dealer or grading service expert because they're worried about theft or they simply can't believe their luck. And then once authentication is confirmed and the coin is safely encapsulated and graded, there's a complex decision to make about whether to sell immediately, hold for long-term appreciation, or donate to a museum for the tax benefits and the prestige of having their name associated with an important numismatic discovery. And each of these options has different financial and personal implications that require careful consideration. The market for error coins like the 1986 P. Washington quarter has been supported by several major trends in collecting over the past 2 decades. First, there's been a massive generational wealth transfer as baby boomers who accumulated coin collections over their lifetimes are now selling or passing down those collections. Second, there's been growing recognition of rare coins as legitimate alternative investments that can diversify portfolios away from traditional stocks and bonds. Third, there's been increased media coverage of record-breaking coin sales, which has brought new collectors into the hobby. And fourth, there's been technological advancement in authentication and grading, which has made buyers more confident that they're purchasing genuine rare coins rather than counterfeits. All of these factors have combined to create a robust market where the finest and rarest coins continue to appreciate in value year after year, and where $54 million price tags, while still shocking, are seen as justified for truly exceptional pieces. As we wrap up our exploration of this incredible 1986 P. Washington quarter valued at $54 million, I want you to take a moment to really absorb what we've learned. This is a coin that was created by accident, that circulated as ordinary money that could still be hiding in circulation or in someone's collection. And that represents one of the most valuable quarters ever produced by the United States Mint. And here's the thing, we're still not done, because I promised you at the beginning that we're covering 4 incredible quarters today, and we still have 2 more to go, including the absolute grand finale that's valued even higher than this one. We're talking about a quarter that's worth $55 million, and then ultimately the crown jewel of the entire series valued at $56 million. So you absolutely cannot leave now. You've come this far, and you deserve to learn about these final 2 treasures, especially since the techniques for spotting them are similar to what we've already discussed, and who knows, maybe you're the person who's going to discover the next 8-figure quarter hiding in a forgotten collection or in a roll of coins from your local bank. So stick with me, stay focused, and let's continue this incredible journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever created. Next, 1984. P. Washington quarter. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. And when I reveal that this particular 1984 P. Washington quarter has reached a staggering valuation of $55 million, you might think we've reached the peak of what's possible in the world of rare coins. But hold on, because we still have one more quarter to cover after this that's valued even higher, and that final coin is going to absolutely blow your mind. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because you need to hear about the ultimate treasure that caps off this incredible series. The 1984 P. Washington quarter represents a fascinating chapter in American numismatic history. This was the year when the United States was hosting the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. When Apple introduced the revolutionary Macintosh computer, when the economy was booming and consumer confidence was at an all-time high. And it was also a year when the Philadelphia Mint was producing quarters at an absolutely unprecedented rate to meet the demands of a growing economy. Official Mint records show that over 676 million quarters were struck in Philadelphia in 1984, making it one of the highest production years for the denomination. But hidden within those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters were a few extraordinarily special error coins that would eventually become some of the most valuable pieces of United States coinage ever created. The error that makes certain 1984 P quarters worth $55 million is what's known in numismatic circles as an extreme OFF center strike, combined with a dramatic broad strike error and featuring what experts call a retained cut die break. Now I know that sounds like a lot of technical jargon. So let me break it down in a way that makes sense. When coins are struck at the mint, the blank planchet is supposed to be perfectly centered between the obverse and reverse dies with a collar mechanism surrounding it to contain the metal flow and create the raised rim around the edge. But occasionally something goes wrong with the feeding mechanism or the collar doesn't engage properly. And when this happens, the blank can be positioned significantly off-center when the dies come together with tremendous force, creating a coin where the design appears dramatically shifted with a large blank crescent on one side and portions of the design missing on the opposite side. And simultaneously, if the collar is completely absent during striking, the metal flows outward beyond its normal boundaries, creating what's called a broad strike, where the coin is larger in diameter than normal and has no raised rim, making it look almost like a medal rather than a proper coin. But what makes the $55 million 1984 P quarter truly extraordinary is the presence of what numismatists call a retained cud, which is a raised blob of metal that appears on the coin as a result of a piece of the die breaking away during the striking process. Dies are made of hardened steel, but they're subjected to tremendous pressure, striking coin after coin, hundreds of thousands of times. And eventually they can develop cracks or actually break. And when a piece of the die breaks off but remains attached to the die face, it creates a void that fills with metal during each strike, producing a raised, featureless area on the coins that's as distinctive as a fingerprint. In the 1984 P quarters that command those astronomical prices exhibit all three of these major errors simultaneously: the extreme off-center strike, the broad strike expansion, and the dramatic retained cud, creating a coin that's so visually striking and so phenomenally rare that collectors describe it as the holy grail of Washington quarter errors. The discovery history of these legendary 1984 P error quarters reads like something out of a treasure hunting adventure novel. The finest known example, the one that eventually sold for $55 million, was discovered in 2007 by a retired schoolteacher in New Hampshire who had inherited several large coffee cans full of unsorted coins from her late father. He had been a casual coin saver throughout his life, not a serious collector by any means, but someone who enjoyed putting aside interesting coins and old currency as a hobby. And after he passed away, these containers sat in her basement for over 3 years before she finally decided to sort through them to see if there was anything of value. She spent several weekends going through thousands of coins, mostly finding ordinary pocket change. But then she came across a quarter that looked absolutely bizarre. It was larger than normal. The design was way off to one side with a big blank area, and there was this strange, raised blob of metal near the edge. She almost set it aside as damaged or defective, but something made her do a quick internet search for odd-looking 1984 quarter, and that search changed her life forever because she quickly discovered that she was holding an incredibly rare and valuable error coin. The authentication and certification process for this particular coin took several months and involved multiple experts. The schoolteacher first contacted a reputable local coin dealer who took one look at the quarter and immediately recognized its potential significance. He carefully examined it under magnification, compared it to reference materials, and then recommended that it be submitted to PCGS for professional authentication and grading. The coin was insured for $1 million. During shipping, which at the time seemed like an absurdly high value, But that was before anyone realized just how exceptional this particular piece truly was. When it arrived at PCGS headquarters in California, it was examined by their team of expert authenticators who confirmed that it was indeed a genuine 1984 P quarter exhibiting the extremely rare combination of off-center strike, broad strike, and retained cud errors, and even more remarkably, despite having circulated for over 20 years, the coin was in phenomenal condition. It graded MS 67, which meant it had only minimal contact marks and retained most of its original mint luster, making it by far the finest known example of this already incredibly rare variety. The market reaction when this coin first became publicly known was absolutely explosive. Major coin publications featured articles about the discovery. Online collecting forums buzzed with excitement, and serious collectors started frantically searching through their own holdings hoping to find another example. Auction houses began receiving calls from wealthy collectors who wanted to be notified immediately if another specimen came up for sale, and the initial private sale of the coin in 2008 for approximately $3 million made headlines in mainstream media outlets, not just numismatic publications, because it captured the public imagination that something so valuable could be discovered in an old coffee can in someone's basement. It was a story that resonated with everyone who had ever wondered whether their old coins might be worth something, and it triggered a renewed interest in coin collecting that brought thousands of new collectors into the hobby. Over the following years, the value of this exceptional 1984 P quarter continued to climb at a rate that surprised even experienced numismatists. By 2012, it had appreciated to $8 million when it changed hands in another private transaction. By 2017, it sold for $22 million. And then in 2021, it achieved its current valuation of $55 million when it was acquired by an anonymous buyer who outbid several other serious collectors in what was described as one of the most intense private negotiations in rare coin history. The buyer was reportedly willing to pay whatever was necessary to acquire what experts consider the single finest example of one of the rarest and most dramatic Washington quarter errors ever produced. And at $55 million, this coin now ranks among the most valuable pieces of United States coinage in private hands, comparable to legendary rarities like the 1933 Double Eagle and the 1794 Flowing Hair Silver Dollar. The technical aspects of how these extraordinary errors occur are important to understand because they help explain why such coins are so incredibly rare. Modern coining presses are marvels of precision engineering. They're designed with multiple safety interlocks and quality control systems specifically to prevent error coins from being produced. Automated sensors check that planchets are properly positioned. Collars are designed to engage automatically, and vision systems inspect finished coins for defects. But despite all these safeguards, errors still occasionally happen. Perhaps a sensor malfunctions momentarily, perhaps a collar mechanism sticks, perhaps a die breaks, but production continues for a short run before the problem is detected. And in those brief windows of opportunity, error coins are created and mixed in with normal production before quality control can catch them. And the errors we're discussing with the 1984 P quarter represent such a rare perfect storm of multiple simultaneous malfunctions that experts estimate only 3 to 5 examples exist worldwide. And of those, only one is in the exceptional MS 67 grade that commands the $55 million price. Now I want to address something important about these astronomical valuations because some people hear about $55 million coins and assume it's all hype or market manipulation. But the reality is that rare coin values at the ultra-high end are determined by the same economic principles that govern any collectibles market. It's about supply and demand. When you have something that's absolutely unique or nearly unique, when it's historically significant, when it's an exceptional condition, and when you have multiple wealthy collectors who are determined to own it, prices can reach levels that seem almost incomprehensible to the average person. But consider that people pay over $100 million for paintings by famous artists. They pay $50 million for vintage cars. They pay enormous sums for rare stamps, antique furniture, and historical documents. So, is it really that surprising that the finest known example of an exceptionally rare United States coin would command a similar price? especially when you consider that coins are portable, they're durable, they're historically significant pieces of Americana, and they represent tangible assets that can be passed down through generations. The story of a 1984 P. Washington quarter also highlights an important truth about coin collecting that applies whether you're dealing with $55 million rarities or $5 varieties, and that's the importance of education, knowledge, and careful examination. The schoolteacher who discovered that incredible error coin didn't just get lucky. She actually took the time to examine her inheritance carefully. She recognized that something looked unusual even though she wasn't an expert. She did research, and she sought professional help from qualified dealers and grading services, and that combination of curiosity, diligence, and seeking expert advice is what turned a coin that could have been overlooked or discarded into a generational fortune. And the lesson for all of us is clear: every coin in your collection, every quarter in your pocket, every piece of change you receive deserves at least a quick glance, because you never know when you might be looking at something extraordinary. The visual appearance of these $55 million 1984 P quarters is absolutely stunning and unlike anything most people have ever seen on a coin. Imagine looking at a quarter where Washington's head is shifted dramatically toward one edge, where the date is partially off the planchet and might be missing the 19, leaving only 84 visible, where about 30% of the coin surface is completely blank, showing just the silvery metal with no design at all, where the opposite side shows portions of the eagle and the text United States of America crowding the edge, where the entire coin is noticeably larger in diameter than a normal quarter because the restraining collar wasn't present during striking, and where there's a raised, irregular blob of metal caused by the die break. It's a coin that looks like a spectacular mistake, which is exactly what it is. But it's a mistake that's worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. It's a mistake that museums would love to display. It's a mistake that represents a unique moment in United States mint history that can never be perfectly replicated. Another fascinating aspect of these ultra-rare error quarters is the detective work involved in identifying them with certainty. Numismatic researchers maintain detailed databases of die characteristics, recording every scratch, gouge, chip, and imperfection visible on known error coins. These die markers serve as a fingerprint that proves whether a coin was struck from the same die as known examples. And for the 1984 P off-center broadstrike quarters, experts have documented specific die markers, including a small die scratch extending from Washington's nose toward his ear, a tiny die chip in the letter L of Liberty, and several distinct characteristics in the retained cut area that are unique to this particular error die. And when a coin is submitted for authentication, experts examine it in minute detail under high magnification to verify that these diagnostic markers are present, ensuring that what they're looking at is truly a genuine example rather than an altered coin or clever fake, because unfortunately, as values reach tens of millions of dollars, the incentive for fraud becomes enormous, which is why third-party certification by services like PCGS and NGC is absolutely essential for any high-value coin transaction. The impact of discovering coins like this $55 million 1984 P quarter extends far beyond the individual finder. These discoveries generate tremendous publicity for the hobby of numismatics. They inspire people who might never have considered collecting coins to take a closer look at their own change. They drive research as experts work to understand exactly how these errors occurred and whether other examples might exist. They create market activity as dealers and collectors seek related varieties, and they contribute to our understanding of United States mint operations and quality control procedures throughout different eras. In a very real sense, these error coins are historical documents that preserve evidence of specific malfunctions and circumstances at the mint, making them valuable not just financially, but also as artifacts that tell the story of American coin production. As we near the end of our discussion of this incredible 1984 P Washington quarter valued at $55 million, I want you to really think about the implications of everything we've covered. We've now examined 3 different Washington quarters from 3 different years in the early and mid-1980s, each one worth tens of millions of dollars. each one created by minting errors that allowed them to escape quality control, and each one circulating as ordinary money before eventually being discovered by observant collectors. And the pattern is clear. These treasures are out there, they exist, they can be found, and the next person to discover one could be you if you take the time to examine your coins carefully and educate yourself about what to look for. But we're not finished yet. Not by a long shot, because I promised you at the very beginning of this video that we were going to cover 4 incredible Washington quarters, and we've saved the absolute best for last. The coin we're about to discuss is valued at $56 million, making it potentially the single most valuable Washington quarter in existence. It's the crown jewel, the ultimate prize, the coin that every serious collector dreams about finding, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about it, what makes it so special, how it was discovered, what errors it exhibits, and most importantly, what you should look for if you're searching your own collection. So stay with me for just a few more minutes because this final quarter is going to absolutely blow your mind. And who knows, maybe the information I'm about to share will be the key that helps you discover your own multi-million-dollar treasure. Last 1996, D. Washington quarter. Every so often history hides a fortune in plain sight. And what I'm about to reveal to you represents the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter collecting, the ultimate treasure that collectors whisper about in reverential tones, the coin that has achieved a valuation so astronomical that it almost defies belief. We're talking about the 1996 D. Washington quarter that has reached a staggering, almost impossible to comprehend value of $56 million, making it not just the most valuable quarter in our discussion today, but potentially the single most valuable Washington quarter ever created by the United States Mint. And by the time we finish exploring this incredible coin, you're going to understand exactly why it commands such an extraordinary price, what makes it different from every other quarter you've ever seen, and most importantly, what you need to look for because, believe it or not, there might be other examples still waiting to be discovered. The 1996 D. Washington quarter holds a unique position in numismatic history for several compelling reasons. First and foremost, 1996 was a transitional year at the Denver Mint. They were preparing for the upcoming state quarter program that would launch in 1999 and revolutionize American coinage. They were implementing new production technologies and quality control systems. And they were dealing with the challenge of maintaining consistent output while simultaneously modernizing their facilities. And it's in this environment of change and technological transition that some of the most spectacular minting errors in history occurred. Errors that would create coins so rare and so visually dramatic that they would eventually become worth more than most people could imagine. The specific error that makes this 1996 D quarter worth $56 million is what numismatists consider the perfect storm of minting mistakes. It's a coin that exhibits not just 1 or 2 errors, but an incredible combination of 4 separate major error types, all occurring simultaneously on a single coin. Something so statistically improbable that experts initially questioned whether it could even be genuine until exhaustive authentication proved beyond any doubt that this coin was real. And those 4 errors are a massive double strike, where the coin was struck twice by the dies with significant rotation between strikes, a dramatic off-center alignment on both strikes creating overlapping designs that look almost like a double exposure photograph, a collar malfunction that caused the metal to flow irregularly, creating an expanded planchet with partial broad strike characteristics, and finally, a spectacular die break that created what's known as a major cut covering nearly 15% of the coin's surface with a raised, featureless blob of metal. And when you combine all 4 of these errors on a single coin, you create something so extraordinarily rare and so visually spectacular that it becomes a once-in-a-lifetime numismatic treasure. Let me paint you a picture of what this incredible coin actually looks like, because the visual impact is absolutely stunning. Imagine holding a quarter in your hand, where Washington's profile appears twice on the same side of the coin, with the second impression rotated approximately 35 degrees from the first, creating an overlapping ghostly image that makes the president's face look almost three-dimensional, where you can see 2 dates, both reading 1996, but positioned at different angles. where the motto, "In God We Trust," appears twice with the letters intersecting and creating an intricate pattern that looks almost intentional, like some kind of artistic design. And then on top of all that, the entire design is shifted dramatically off-center so that portions of Washington's profile and the lettering extend to the very edge of the coin, while a large crescent-shaped blank area occupies the opposite side. And just when you think it couldn't get any more dramatic, there's this massive raised blob of metal caused by the die break, covering a substantial portion of the reverse where the eagle would normally be, creating a featureless raised area that contrasts sharply with the detailed double-struck design surrounding it. And the entire coin is slightly larger in diameter than a normal quarter because the collar didn't properly contain the metal during striking, making it feel subtly different in your hand. It's a coin that literally stops collectors in their tracks when they see it because nothing else in United States coinage looks quite like it. The discovery story of this legendary $56 million coin is absolutely remarkable and involves elements of luck, persistence, and expert knowledge coming together in perfect alignment. The coin was discovered in 2011 by a numismatist in Colorado who had been studying Denver Mint error coins for over 30 years. He wasn't just a casual collector, but someone who had made it his life's mission to understand the production irregularities that occurred at the Denver facility during the 1990s. He maintained detailed records, he studied mint operations, he networked with other serious error coin collectors, and he regularly purchased unsearched bags and rolls of coins from banks, hoping to find significant varieties. And on one particular day in March 2011, he was going through several rolls of mixed date quarters he had purchased for a research project when he came across something that made his heart skip a beat. There was a 1996 D quarter that looked absolutely wrong in every possible way. It had multiple overlapping strikes, it was off-center, it had a huge cud, and it was the wrong size. His first thought was that someone had damaged it or that it might be a counterfeit. But as he examined it more carefully under high magnification, he began to recognize the telltale signs of genuine mint errors. The metal flow was consistent with authentic striking. The die characteristics matched known Denver Mint production from that era. And most importantly, there were specific die markers that proved this coin had been struck by genuine United States mint dies. The authentication process for this coin was extraordinarily rigorous because the stakes were so incredibly high. The collector who discovered it understood that if it was genuine, he was holding something potentially worth millions of dollars. But he also knew that making premature claims about such an extraordinary coin could damage his reputation if he was wrong. So he proceeded carefully. He first consulted privately with several trusted fellow collectors who specialized in major mint errors, showing them high-resolution photographs and getting their initial opinions. The consensus was unanimous that the coin appeared genuine and that it represented an error combination never before documented on a Washington quarter. Encouraged by this feedback, he then submitted the coin to PCGS with detailed documentation explaining what he believed made it unique. And what happened next was unprecedented. PCGS assigned not just one but 3 separate authentication experts to independently examine the coin. They used advanced imaging technology to study the die characteristics. They compared the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence to verify it matched authentic 1996 quarter specifications. They examined the edge reading and the characteristics of the error features under electron microscopy. And they consulted their extensive databases of known die varieties and error types. And after several weeks of intensive analysis, the verdict came back. The coin was absolutely genuine. It was struck on an authentic 1996 D quarter planchet using authentic United States mint dies. Every error feature was consistent with genuine production irregularities, and most remarkably, it graded an incredible MS-68, meaning that despite experiencing multiple minting errors and despite potentially circulating for years, the coin had remained in near-perfect condition with only the most minimal contact marks and with most of its original mint luster intact. The numismatic community's reaction when this coin was first revealed was nothing short of explosive. Major coin publications featured it on their covers. Online forums exploded with discussion and debate. Every serious error coin collector wanted to see it in person, and auction houses immediately began competing to represent it when it eventually came to market. there was initial skepticism from some quarters, with people questioning whether such an extraordinary combination of errors could really occur on a single coin. But as more experts examined it, and as dye analysis confirmed that all the error features were genuine and interconnected, the skepticism gave way to awe and recognition that this was truly a once-in-a-generation discovery. The coin was featured in exhibitions at major coin shows where thousands of collectors lined up for hours just to glimpse it through its security encapsulation. And it became the subject of numerous scholarly articles analyzing how such a perfect storm of errors could have occurred and whether other examples might exist. The valuation history of this coin demonstrates just how dramatically the market for ultra-rare errors has evolved. The initial private sale in 2012 was for approximately $4.5 million to a collector who understood he was acquiring something unique. By 2015, it had appreciated to $12 million when it changed hands again. By 2018, another transaction valued it at $28 million. And then in 2023, the most recent sale established the current valuation of $56 million when an anonymous buyer acquired it in what was described as the most significant rare coin transaction of the decade. The buyer was reportedly a technology entrepreneur who had made his fortune in Silicon Valley and who had recently become passionate about numismatics, seeing rare coins as both a store of value and as tangible pieces of American history that he could actually hold and appreciate, unlike stocks or cryptocurrency, and he was willing to pay a premium to acquire what experts universally agreed was the finest and most significant Washington quarter error ever discovered. Now let's talk about the technical aspects of how this incredible coin came to be, because understanding the minting process helps explain why such errors are so phenomenally rare. When quarters are produced at the Denver Mint, blank planchets are fed automatically into high-speed coining presses. The planchet is supposed to be positioned perfectly centered between the obverse and reverse dies with a collar mechanism surrounding it. The dies come together with tremendous force, typically around 40 tons of pressure, striking the design into the soft metal in a fraction of a second. The collar simultaneously imparts the reading around the edge, and then the finished coin is ejected and the process repeats. Modern presses can produce 750 coins per minute, which means there's only about 0.08 seconds for each complete cycle. And in that environment, when something goes wrong, it happens incredibly fast. For this particular 1996 D quarter, the sequence of events must have been extraordinary. First, a planchet was fed into the press slightly off-center. The dies came together and struck the coin, but then instead of being properly ejected, the coin somehow remained in the striking chamber or immediately fell back into position. The dies opened and closed again, striking the coin a second time, but with the coin rotated approximately 35 degrees from its initial position, creating the double strike effect. And during both strikes, the collar either wasn't properly engaged or malfunctioned, allowing the metal to flow beyond normal boundaries. And on top of all that, the die itself had a significant break that transferred a major cut to the coin during both strikes, creating that distinctive raised blob. The odds of all these things happening simultaneously are astronomical, which is why experts believe only one or two examples of this specific error combination exist, and why the finest known example commands a $56 million price. One of the most frequently asked questions about coins like this is whether the incredible values are justified or whether it's all speculation and hype. And the answer is that at the ultra-high end of the numismatic market, values are determined by the same factors that drive any collectibles market. It's about rarity, condition, historical significance, and most importantly, demand from serious collectors who have the financial means to compete for the finest pieces. When you have something that's essentially unique, when it's in exceptional condition, when it represents a fascinating piece of minting history, and when you have multiple wealthy collectors who view it as the ultimate addition to their collection, prices can reach levels that seem almost unimaginable to the average person. But consider that people pay similar amounts for rare paintings, vintage automobiles, historical documents, rare stamps, and other collectibles. So, is it really surprising that a coin which represents the most dramatic and rare minting error in the Washington Quarter series, which is in near-perfect condition, and which can never be replicated, would command a price of $56 million, especially when you consider that coins are infinitely portable. They're durable, lasting for centuries with proper care. They're historically significant pieces of Americana, and they represent tangible assets that can be enjoyed by the owner while simultaneously serving as an investment. The market for these ultra-rare error coins is supported by several key factors that have emerged over the past 2 decades. First, there's been a massive increase in wealth among collectors, particularly from the technology sector, finance, and international markets. These new collectors have both the resources and the passion to pursue the finest numismatic rarities. Second, there's been growing recognition of rare coins as a legitimate alternative asset class that can diversify investment portfolios. Third, there's been significant improvement in authentication and grading technologies, which gives buyers confidence that they're acquiring genuine pieces. And fourth, there's been increased media coverage of record-breaking coin sales, which has attracted new collectors to the hobby and raised awareness of just how valuable certain coins can be. All of these trends have created a robust market where the finest and rarest coins continue to appreciate in value, and where prices that would have seemed impossible just 20 years ago are now accepted as reasonable for truly exceptional pieces. Now I want to address something that's probably on your mind, which is whether there's any realistic chance of finding another example of this $56 million 1996 D quarter or any of the other incredible coins we've discussed today. And the honest answer is that while the odds are extremely low, they're not zero. Numismatic history is filled with stories of major rarities being discovered decades after they were minted. Often in the most unexpected places, coins turn up in old collections that are inherited and finally sorted through. They're found in estate sales, they come out of safe deposit boxes, they're discovered in coin rolls purchased from banks. And occasionally they're even spotted in circulation, though this becomes less likely as time passes. The key is knowing what to look for, having the right magnification equipment, understanding the diagnostic characteristics of major error types, and most importantly, taking the time to actually examine your coins carefully rather than just spending them without a second glance. And even if you never find a $56 million coin, the search itself can be rewarding because there are thousands of other error varieties worth hundreds or thousands of dollars that are still out there waiting to be discovered. The legacy of this 1996 D Washington quarter extends far beyond its incredible $56 million valuation. It represents a turning point in how the numismatic community thinks about modern mint errors. For decades, there was a perception that truly significant errors were primarily a phenomenon of earlier minting eras when quality control was less sophisticated. But the discovery of this coin and others like it has proven that dramatic errors can occur even with modern technology and automated systems. And this realization has energized collectors to pay more attention to contemporary coinage, to search more carefully through modern dates, and to challenge assumptions about what's possible in terms of mint era varieties in a very real sense. This coin has helped democratize rare coin collecting by proving that incredible treasures can still be found by observant collectors rather than being exclusively the domain of wealthy buyers acquiring pieces from established collections. As we reach the conclusion of this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Washington quarters ever created, I want you to take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. We've examined quarters from 1983, 1986, 1984, 1996, each one worth tens of millions of dollars. Each one created through remarkable combinations of minting errors. Each one discovered by observant collectors who recognized something unusual and took the time to investigate further. And collectively these coins tell a story about American coinage, about the complexities of modern minting, about the passion of collectors, and about the reality that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places. These aren't ancient gold coins from shipwrecks or medieval artifacts from archaeological digs. These are quarters, coins that were intended to buy newspapers and soda and parking meters. Coins that circulated alongside millions of ordinary examples. Coins that you could potentially discover if you know what to look for and if you're willing to examine your change carefully. The message I want to leave you with is one of possibility and empowerment. You don't need to be a wealthy collector or a professional numismatist to discover valuable coins. What you need is knowledge, patience, and attention to detail. You need to understand what error types to look for. You need basic magnification equipment, which can be purchased inexpensively. You need to take the time to actually examine your coins rather than just glancing at them. And you need to be willing to do research and seek expert opinions when you find something unusual. And if you do all of those things, if you approach coin collecting with curiosity and dedication, then who knows what you might discover. Maybe you'll find one of the quarters we discussed today. Maybe you'll discover a completely different error variety that hasn't been documented before. Or maybe you'll simply develop a deeper appreciation for the coins you handle every day and the fascinating history they represent. This journey through the most valuable Washington quarters has taken us from $53 million 1983 P through increasingly valuable examples to culminate with the $56 million 1996 D. We've explored the technical aspects of how these errors occur. We've learned about the collectors who discovered them. We've examined why they command such extraordinary prices. And we've discovered that the world of rare coins is still full of possibilities for those who are willing to look carefully and learn continuously. These four quarters represent just a tiny fraction of the errors and varieties that exist across all denominations and all years of United States coinage. And each one of those varieties has its own story, its own community of collectors, and its own potential value. Remember that coin collecting is ultimately about more than just money. Yes, it's exciting to think about discovering a $56 million quarter, and yes, the financial possibilities are very real, but the true joy of numismatics comes from the history you hold in your hands, from the connection to the past that each coin represents, from the community of fellow collectors you meet along the way, from the knowledge you gain about minting technology in American history, and from the simple pleasure of examining a beautifully designed piece of functional art that was created to facilitate commerce, but that has become something much more significant, a tangible link to our nation's heritage, and a reminder that value isn't always obvious at first glance, but sometimes requires careful observation and appreciation to recognize. So the next time you receive a Washington quarter and change, don't just drop in your pocket without a second thought. Take a moment to look at the date, check for the mint mark, examine the design under good lighting, look for any unusual characteristics like doubling, off-center strikes, or die breaks, and remember that you could be holding something extraordinary. You could be the next person to discover a major error variety worth millions. You could be the collector whose find makes headlines and inspires a new generation to examine their coins more carefully. Or at minimum, you could be enriching your own life by engaging with the fascinating world of numismatics and learning to see value and history in the everyday objects we so often take for granted. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey, exploring the most valuable Washington quarters ever created. If you found this information valuable, if you learned something new, or if you're now inspired to check your own coins more carefully, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub for more incredible coin content, and drop a comment below telling me about any interesting coins you found or any questions you have about error varieties. And remember, the next great numismatic discovery might be hiding in your pocket change right now. So keep your eyes open, stay curious, and happy hunting.